connecting with strategy. And this, in an organizational change, it's really about helping people understand the why. Why do we need to do this in the first place? So we need to have a vision and provide people with a sense of meaning. The reason that that's so important is that then means that, you know, as a change agent, we can lead people the way, but we can't make everybody follow a certain direction. We need people to choose to follow us. And often they choose, when they understand the why, that actually takes away some of the objections as to why they don't want to. And it's interesting, I was reflecting on as we came into the lockdown. If you think right at the start, about 8 weeks ago, we were seeing that other countries were suffering with the coronavirus, they'd had lockdown. The sort of terminology though that we'd heard at that point was that it was about herd immunity. And that younger people didn't necessarily suffer as much as over 70s, say. So what I didn't understand right at the start was, why were we being locked down? It didn't really make sense, because if we're locking down, then we're not going to get the herd immunity. And then the let's protect the NHS message started to come out more strongly in terms of that. And I remember also reading about something to do with viral load, that if we all carried out going on infecting people at a high level, understanding quite how infectious coronavirus was. Once I understood that the facts as to that made sense, it was far more contagious than other things. And also the government started coming out with this stay at home, save lives, save the NHS. Now that is a really powerful vision for many people in the UK. I'm interested as to why some of the other countries, you know, whether it was less strong, you can see some of the other countries people are resisting. You've seen people not being so positive, let's say in the States, out, you know, saying you can't lock us down. But that was a very, very powerful why. And it gives us a vision that we can all get behind. And I think people will talk later about going through denial and resistance, but people understood why. And we knew what we had to do, stay at home. The other area that, in my experience, communication, particularly change communication in the workplace, can be really weak on. Often we say, you've just got to do this because, right? And we need to do this. Corroboration, this is about helping people, it's supporting the why, all right? So it's helping us corroborate that reason for change, and ideally with evidence. In this chapter, these are separate chapters in the book, so I talk about different influencing shortcuts. Cialdini talks about various forms of influence, and I've just picked out 3 of them here to focus on. So one of them would be appealing to authority. Now, again, going back to the government, you know, communicating the coronavirus, saying obviously they were flanked a lot of the time, almost every briefing I saw, they would be flanked by medical or scientific experts. So they were appealing to authority by having that sense of science attached to it. And that made it more credible, particularly, you know, where people have cynicism about whether they believe governments, etc., etc. Other ways of influencing, and of course, if we apply that in the workplace away from coronavirus, it might be about, if we're a financial services organisation, referring to the FCA, or, you know, laws like GDPR. We've got to do such and such because of GDPR. They're shortcuts. Authority means we need to do this because. Not necessarily that motivational, you notice. Most people groan at the thought of GDPR, but nevertheless, it's a way of influencing. And my recommendation is we should be using 2 or 3 different methods of influencing, and not just refer to the science, not just refer to the these other aspects. And then the final one is about collaboration, and that's building on this idea you can't do it on your own. For us to do anything, to have a change, you need to create almost a change league of people. And the key with that is making sure that we really appreciate diversity. We have a tendency as human beings to get on most easily with people who are like us, but actually in terms of a team, that's not the right answer, because we're going to have the same blind spots. So think about how you can work with other people who will look at things in a different way, welcome those diverse viewpoints, because those diverse viewpoints in your change team will help you then realize how more and more people will respond to that change, and they'll make you more flexible in terms of taking people with you. They can help you refine that messaging, and they can help you, I think of it like ripples in a pond. You know, one stone can't get to the outside, or it will be very, very small ripples by the time it gets to the outside of a lake. But if we have a number of stones all going in the same direction, then those ripples go much stronger, and we're all going to get out there. And it's this sort of knock-on effect. If people are in resistance, this is where it goes back to this connecting with strategy. They're resisting because they don't get it. They don't get why. So we need to explain why, and we also need to provide empathy as to why they feel that way and listen to them. People need listening to at this stage rather than just answering everything and bouncing back. So the more we listen and empathize, the more people start to progress for themselves. And you can notice that they'll start to oscillate between the past and the future. And that's great because they're moving into exploration. They might ask, it might be a bit negatively worded, but they'll ask a question about what things could be like in the future. And that's a sign of progress. So the key was us asking open questions, listening, empathizing, and explaining the why. Once they get into exploration, they're really starting to progress. And what we want then is to support them, reinforce their positive behaviors, answer questions, and empower them to come up with answers for themselves. And I'll lead now into where I'm thinking about us coming out of this lockdown. So I believe we are going to have a different way of working. We need to involve people in defining that change. So what is it you like about the way things are working now, and how could we take the best things about this setup and work on, that we've got going now, and go back to the workplace, because we need to be successful, we need to thrive as a business, we need to sell our way out of this. But what would you need to make sure that you could be productive in a new workplace? Let's redefine our workplace. And then once people are committed to the new way of working, then we need to recognize them from doing that. We need to treat them as champions, and they're ideal people to collaborate with and bring into our Change League. And in a league of people, we've all got different strengths and weaknesses. In the book, I talk about Belbin's team roles, just because that's a really useful model to use. And if you look at change, essentially there's different activities. I divide it into three. So at the start of the change, you've got to define it, you've got to inspire people, you've got to work out what the why is, you've got to energize people. So that's quite a people activity, and certain traits are good at that. So you need to get things started, get people galvanized, you need to be courageous and create some noise. You also need to do a bit of homework and make sure that you've properly thought about what that change is. That's probably a different person. So I know I'm okay at making the noise, but if you want to look in the detail, so that we don't get unstuck earlier, it's good to have someone who's looking through it more thoroughly, who's perhaps the custodian of process, like and again in Belbin this might be the coordinator. So for someone who's the project manager who keeps us on track and has written out a plan. In the middle of it is things like we need to just keep getting on with things, we need to drive through. Often the person in Belbin terms, the resource investigator, who's great at starting things, they tend to be pretty useless at finishing things, and they'll lose interest. And I think that's one of the reasons that organisational change often fails, because we try to keep that same change team on the whole way through the journey. And actually we've got different strengths, so it's being alert to your strengths, and then why not bring in different people. Once you get let's say you've put in a system, right, a new system, you've defined it, you've done the vision, you've trained people, and for those who are easily bored, the exciting stuff's done. But there are people who are brilliant at implementation and are brilliant at dotting the I's and crossing the T's. Those are the people you want to bring in. And if you do that, that the thing about the successive change, if you do that and then refresh that Change League at that key point to keep the momentum going, that's when you get your change embedded into business as usual. That's when you get your benefits occurring, in my opinion, and that's where you start to get the value of having put the change in the first place. But in order to do that, you've got to appreciate that I know that socially, someone who's very detailed and process probably isn't the person that I naturally get on with. I've learned to massively appreciate those people because they make my life a lot easier. But in terms of the way they work, they do feel like they make life harder, and vice versa. I'm erratic, I drive mad people who want to follow a process or follow something to the details. So that's the difference, valuing differences and having that range of people at the right time.